Okay, welcome to the Conspiracy Panda podcast, where you're joined by me, Peter Badley, the host. On my left, we've got a young, strapping young man called Tom Bourne, and on my right, we have got a young man called Benjamin Watkins. How are we doing, boys? Are you okay?
All good, mate. All good.
Yep, good.
Movie champion.
Oh, good. Well, if you're the champion, mate, then you can carry us through this because, yeah, I possibly could struggle. Right, so basically, we've set up this podcast because we like mysteries. We do love a good mystery, and we also love a good conspiracy, to the point of where we're not trying to prove anything wrong or create any sort of suggestive sort of material. We're just here to talk about different ideas that people have had, and just to give our impressions on it and ultimately leave the decision down to you guys, the listeners. So today we're going to start off with our first episode, and we're basing it on the assassination of JFK, who of course is John Fitzgerald Kennedy. JFK was, of course, the 35th president of the USA from January 1961 up until his assassination November 1963. It took place in Dallas, Texas at 12:30 while he was riding in a presidential motorcade through the Dealey Plaza. Now, Tom, would you like to get us started by throwing a few theories at us? And
I'm going to start it with the most common one that I suppose everyone knows, and that is that there was possibly a second shooter behind the grassy knoll, which would show why that the bullet would have had to have curved to have done the injuries that people say that happened. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I think just for the benefit of the listeners, we ought to give a little bit of backstory. So, of course, we know that the shooter, or the alleged shooter, was Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, it's claimed that he shot 3 bullets. So the first one totally missed the target, really bad shooter. The second one caught the president in the neck, then entered his, I believe it was the governor of Texas, a chap called Connolly. Yeah, I'm sure it's Connolly. So basically, it's gone through the president's neck, out through the front of his neck, into his right shoulder, through his body, into his right hand, and into his left thigh. And then the third shot, obviously, was the fatal shot. So, give us your take on this, Tom. What do you think about that?
Well, I think this one is probably the most concrete, because as you just described, the bullet came out of the president and into Connolly, but the projection that the bullet would have had to taken would have made it have to curve as it went through. So to me,
absolutely, because if it's gone through the president's neck and he's on the back seat, let's say he's on the right sort of side of the seat, if it's gone through his neck and it's gone through the back of Connolly, through his shoulder, then as you say, it would have had to have some sort of mad curve on it, or the bullet just said, you know what, I'm going to take a right here and I'm going to go that way, which I can't see. So it's impossible.
So to me, I there are some theories where people believe that Lee Harvey Oswald did shoot, but as you said in your little talk about him, his first shot missed. So a lot of people think that the second shot from him is what hit in the front seat, and the second shooter is what hit the president's throat.
Right, okay. We've got to bear in mind as well that Oswald shot from the, I think it was the 6th story of the Texan, was it a Texas library?
It was like a book, so I think it's where
the Texas School Book Depository. That's it. Yeah. So for him to be on the 6th floor, to sort of have the right angle, to be able to shoot sort of through 2 people is just baffling to me.
And bend, yeah.
Oh yeah, and bend, of course, yeah, definitely.
So it's one of the things where, you know, I personally have the belief that possibly Oswald did try and kill him, whether or not he was put there and framed. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he was the only one firing. If you get me, there are noise like sound clips from an officer who had his radio on, where you can hear a second shot, like a second gun sound. Great descriptive word there.
Yeah.
But so there is that.
Yeah.
So I personally believe that there is enough there, whether you want to call it evidence or not, to prove that on that day there was a second person firing at JFK while he was in his presidential car.
Yeah, and he's in his limousine, absolutely. There was. Have either of you guys seen the footage that the photographer Zap Ruder took? There's a bit of footage online called
He
the
was
Zap Ruder
the
film.
that film is the only film evidence that of the president getting shot, because the Daily Plaza didn't have film coverage from the camera, like television.
Right.
So the zoom, yeah, I can't say his name.
I think it's Bruder.
Yeah,
Zap Ruder.
yeah. His amateur footage, which 1960s isn't the best quality anyway, on
Yeah.
television money. Never mind amateur.
No, absolutely. Like, this is before we had HD TVs and super high focus UHD sort of camcorders. This was sort of like a film tape, and when you watch the footage, you can actually see the quality. It sort of distorts and it's sort of skippy, but you do actually get a full view of sort of what's going on and what happens to the president, and it's tragic, to be fair.
Yeah, and just going off that video, it's I can't see that as enough evidence to show that there couldn't have been anyone else there.
Yeah.
And like I say, that there's an officer who had his radio on, and police say they can't pinpoint where he was on the plaza, but you can definitely hear a second shot.
Nice.
And
is that on that audio that you were just talking about? That audio?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think that was something called the echo patterns of the gunshots. Is that what you've heard as well?
Well, that's what people. I'm sure Ben will get into. People say it was the echo, but a lot of people and myself, I think it sounds like a total different gun.
Like a different gun altogether.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Ben, have you got anything to any ideas on what we've just discussed about the second shooter? Have you got any sort of Does anything come to mind?
Quite a lot of things come to mind, obviously. Based on lots of different accounts from witnesses. Obviously, there was the main issue with the JFK assassination is that the initial review or investigation was quite poor.
That was the Warren Commission, wasn't it?
Yes,
they've
always been noted. They've always been noted as not being the best. However, just because of that, we can't disregard all the information that they put forward. Secondly, the House Committee on Assassinations, again, they don't necessarily seem to be the most reliable of resources either, namely because they seem to just go with whatever conspiracy theory they want to at the time.
Right.
They've often come up with stuff that's already been disproven.
Yeah.
Without the regard for it. So one of the biggest issues here is the actual investigatory work and the research done has never really been very good.
Yeah.
From a lot of people involved. Now, obviously, the whole principle of the second shooter is that Oswald was in the sixth story of the book place.
Yeah,
it's a depository.
Yeah, that's it.
Depository, and on the grassy knoll on the opposite side, there was a shooter behind a fence.
Well,
who fired the other shots? One of the key things here has always been that there's different percentages of the witnesses in the crowd that were there that all report hearing the sounds coming from different directions.
Right.
which is what's led people to believe in this second shooter. This has been one of the key things behind it, is that, they thought the sounds were coming from somewhere else. Now, one of the biggest things to note here is that loud noises, such as gunshots, can often be distorted in urbanized areas.
Yeah, like the sound bouncing off concrete.
Yeah. For instance, if you go outside on bonfire night on the 5th of November, you hear a firework that you think is coming from in front of you, and actually it's behind you by quite some way.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. Really good analogy.
So, and also in the heat of the moment, you're in a fight or flight moment, because the people there aren't necessarily thinking, oh, he's just shooting Kennedy. No, they're thinking, oh crap, somebody's firing a gun.
Yeah.
So they're not instantly going, I wonder where that sound's coming from. They're going, how do I get away from it? Where does it sound like it's coming from? To me, at this instinctive moment, I'm going to go the opposite way. So the belief that it's coming from the grassy knoll, crap, I'm going to jump down. I think it's coming behind me. I'm going to go down.
Yeah.
That's not proof that the bullet is coming from the grassy knoll. It's not proof that it's coming from Oswald. It's just a fight or flight response to the loud noise that's happening. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to get shot in that moment in time.
Of course, yeah, you hear a gunshot and your mind just goes, right, got to survive, let's go, run. Pandemonium, definitely.
So
I totally agree with what you just said there.
And I agree with that as well. But my point would be, how do you explain the audio from the police officer's radio?
So this is one of those really interesting ones, in that the audio, that the echo pattern has always been deemed one of the key evidences behind this second shooter theory.
Yeah.
There are actually various reports of the police officer that was taken from himself saying on multiple occasions that he wasn't there. That actually he wasn't in the plaza itself. He was 1 or 2 streets away.
Right.
And his biggest dispute about the footage is, if that's what's happening, that he knows as soon as that first gunshot went off, it was in his mind to turn his sirens on and go.
Yeah.
And this is the main thing about the footage, is at no point do you ever hear his bike rev or the sirens.
That's very interesting, because if you can pick up a gunshot from, let's assume, half a mile away, just for argument's sake, surely you would be able to hear the engine rev and his siren over that noise. Surely.
So when the bloke who is being used for the main part of this has come out and said, well, that it's wrong, it won't be showing it, it's not an accurate representation of what occurred in his mind, then I think that raises a question. I'm not saying outright this disproves anything, because that's not the point. All I'm saying is we can't rely on audio footage that actually in quite a lot of cases has been proven to be not as accurate as people initially thought.
And this comes down, well, back to what I was saying about how technology in the 60s, you don't get what we've got now. So
yeah,
it's one of the things where the audio could have,
like some kind of interference.
Exactly.
Definitely the way that the sort of sounds would have been recorded. Obviously the microphones back then aren't as good as what we're using today for this podcast, for example, so they could just be picking up sort of, I don't know, a bit of environmental noise or something, just a bit of something like that. If you can hear that, I'm just scratching my little pop shield there, but like, I could imagine like the lesser technologies back then would have been more subject to picking up those interferences.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, as we start going further down for this, because obviously this is a very complex theory in itself, and there's many different sort of topics to cover. The first one is, of course, when it actually comes to the second shooter being spotted, in that there was a number of people who were on that grassy knoll side.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking on the grassy knoll, I'm talking in buildings behind, watching out.
Okay. Yeah.
And the trouble here is that the same person can come out with multiple different accounts.
Yeah, of course, yeah,
and
of course, yeah.
Quite a lot here. There was one person who said he saw somebody behind the fence, and then in his next interview said that person was actually in front of the fence.
Right. So a bit of sort of Chinese whispers going on a little bit.
Not so much Chinese whispers as trying to recall perfectly but not being able to, and in the end going,
Yeah.
well, I don't know whether they were in front of the fence or not. Because if
Yeah.
they were in front of the fence, then there's definitely no second shooter.
Yeah.
If they're
Yeah.
behind the fence, you're raising the question of whether there was.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they don't know. There was maybe 4 or so people. They don't know what they were doing. They weren't paying attention to them. And on
Well-
multiple occasions, they can't recall where they exactly were at that moment in time. And nobody remembers seeing any gun.
The problem
Yeah.
with that as well is trying to recall memory from a traumatic experience. You know, because it is traumatizing. You know, for the people who were there.
Of course,
Oh yeah, of
this is
course,
the,
definitely.
This is the president of the United States.
It's one of their biggest national sort of tragedies that's sort of ever happens. Alongside Abraham Lincoln. It's gonna be the nation's gonna be in mourning for days, weeks, years. It's gonna have those sort of repercussions. No, definitely.
He was only the 4th president, and still is. I believe it still is the 4th president to be assassinated while in office.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong at all.
And the only one in what you would say the beginning of the media age. So that's that's your sort of 1930s onwards, where radio and television
Yeah.
would become things, and film and things like that. The other 3 assassinations are way in the past.
Yeah.
And Kennedy used that really well to get elected. He was very good with media.
Yeah.
And, that's why he became like a really public figure before he was.
Yeah.
Is it inaugurated? Is that what they call it? I'm not the best with
inaugurated president.
Yeah, I'm not the best with American politics. But he was quite in the public eye because of how he used what was at the time a new media through television and all the rest of it. So, a lot of people would be invested in him before he even sat down in the Oval Office, basically.
Yeah. Now,
like you say, recalling things from a traumatic experience does distort people's memories.
Yeah, definitely.
And it always has. A point I'd like to move on to is the shots.
Okay.
Because that's the biggest thing here. The curved bullets, the shots.
Well, in the Warren Commission, which for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that is, the president who got the president who came into the White House after JFK, he put together this little sort of investigation to sort of thoroughly figure out what was going on, and that was ultimately what the Warren Commission was. Now, when they were trying to figure out how the bullet had managed to go from JFK's neck into the governor of Texas's sort of left thigh, ultimately, they put it down to something called the magic bullet theory, which is very interesting. When you think about it, I think when the governor of Texas went into the hospital, they said that the bullet was stuck in his left thigh. However, one of the would you call them porters, the people who push the sort of trolleys around in the hospitals, the guy who was sort of helping the doctors out with this case in particular, found the bullets perfectly intact on the stretcher. I think that's quite interesting, considering the bullet's supposedly gone through 2 people and sort of bounced about everywhere, but still in perfect tap. What do you guys make of that?
I just think it strengthens the second shooter theory, personally. Like you say, it's one of the things where there's no way that a bullet could do that.
I'm going to come out and say it. We've all seen the world. Look, this isn't the world where Wanted exists. Nobody can curve a bullet round somebody just by swinging their arm. This isn't the world of X-Men. Magneto's not going to magically curve a bullet to save the mutant president. Yeah. All of that's bollocks.
Yeah.
Right?
Lee Harvey Oswald was not Angelina Jolie.
That's the point we're going with. But I would say, from my standpoint, is a lot of people, such as porters, technicians, secretaries, nurses, all of that, even doctors, everybody that seems to be involved with this was coming up with their own little, and you can't see me, but I'm doing it in air quotes, facts.
Yeah.
There were so many people who had their own fact that they were willing to sell to the media to earn a buck.
Of course, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, quid's in. Here's my story.
I
Let's
was
give it
there, and
15
I was
minutes.
there, and I saw this. I was there, and I saw this. I was there, and this happened.
Yeah.
Which, it's annoying because like it makes things harder to sieve through. Like
Yeah, of
what
course.
actually, it's in a world in like today's age where everybody's like, oh, fake news, It's like been going on for ages.
Oh, yeah. It's never fake news. I mean,
it's
fake
nothing new.
news has been going on like since the Greek times and before. It's not anything new. But
If JFK got assassinated today, some attention-seeking person would put on Facebook that they were there, and they saw like a second shooter or what have you, and it's just basically the same as selling when people sold their story to newspapers.
Yeah.
A lot of people
It's-
wanted the attention and the money.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the fame that comes with that. Yeah.
and the I was there when JFK died.
Yeah,
That's
this
it.
is my story. Yeah.
No,
I'm a
one
part
thing
of
to
history.
note- One of the things to note here is the eyewitness account of seeing the 3 bullets. There was definitely Oswald shot 3.
Yeah.
That is determined by people who were in the same building as him.
Yep. Well, they
Yeah.
found his gun and they found 3 bullet bullet
casings.
shells, didn't he? Yeah.
3 casings. They also heard 3 shots. There was somebody across the street who saw the 3 shots. Now, when you look at the eyewitness accounts of Connolly and his wife and the Secret Service that were there and the driver and things like that, is that they don't say the one of the 3 bullets missed. In fact, whether one of the bullets missed has been completely up to it. Actually, it's part of the theory.
Right.
More part of the conspiracy theory, in that actually the way worded by Connolly and his wife is Connolly remembers, again, traumatizing situations, deal with it how you will, is he believes he was hit by a second bullet.
Yes, you're right. That was in an
He
interview we did
believes,
in.
and his wife also believes, and other people around there believe that he was hit by a second bullet, and that in fact the first bullet did hit Kennedy in the throat.
Right.
Because Connolly's wife remembers turning around to see him, putting his hands up to his throat because you just got shot in the throat.
Of course, yeah.
And then seeing her husband.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind that these shots weren't like, it wasn't bang, 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 because
He had to reload.
Of course, yeah.
So there is actually time between each shot. Of course, there was a concern that there was a hole in the windshield. And they're saying, well, if a bullet missed, how was there a hole in the windshield? Because actually the shot through the windshield could easily come from the shot through Kennedy's throat.
Yeah.
That's the same trajectory of the bullet.
Yeah, or it could have even been the bullet that went through Colony.
Connolly, no, because it did land in his thigh.
Oh, okay.
That's a legit one. It did go into him.
Right.
So the reason this whole curved bullet comes about, or this magic bullet, is because nobody can determine which of the first 2 shots did what.
Yeah, because I did watch today. Colony actually did an interview in 1966, and he says, "This is a quote, not these exact words, but he said it's to his knowledge that another bullet struck him. There was another spectator to the event. His name was James T. Tague. He says that a stray bullet hit the sidewalk and a fragment of the bullet hit his cheek, and he had a visible cut there, and obviously he was bleeding from this cut. So that's that's adding fuel to this sort of idea of the second shooter.
However, again, it was referred to with him that could have been caused by many things.
Right.
Tague was never deemed a reliable witness in that. And let's be honest, if the bullet goes through Kennedy's throat, hits the sidewalk, still ricochets.
Yeah,
That
that's
doesn't mean
that's
that
fair
that
enough.
doesn't mean that it wasn't that first shot or even the third shot that
But
ricocheted. If it hits the windshield, there's going to be a bit of bullet. There's a fragmentation.
Yeah.
It hits a solid surface. There's a fragmentation.
What's interesting with this bit, though, in the Warren Commission, they've actually got a photograph of a bullet dent in the floor, and it says possibly originated from the lead core of a bullet. So perhaps that suggests that there was another bullet flying in the vicinity that clearly missed its target and sort of left a valuable piece of evidence just there on the sidewalk.
I don't see that as being missed its target. Because you can easily, you shoot somebody through the neck, the bullet doesn't suddenly stop.
Yeah.
The flesh, the human flesh in itself is very flimsy, especially around the
it's
neck.
very weak. Yeah, definitely.
You see how much a bullet goes through, and a bullet goes through.
Yeah.
Right? You shoot somebody in a room, that bullet goes into the wall. Doesn't stop in the neck unless it comes in contact with bone. So again, if you're shooting somebody through the throat, you're not really massively reducing the trajectory and the speed of the bullet.
No, that's fair. That's very fair. That's very good point.
Yeah. So what I was saying was, it was to do with Connolly, and the second shot is that you actually see him turn and then turn the other way, which is when he gets shot.
Right.
Now, he says he turned upon hearing the first noise.
Yeah.
So again, that doesn't prove that the second bullet didn't go through Kennedy and then into him. But my issue with this second shooter theory is that both men were shot from the same direction. Now, if somebody shot Connolly from the front,
but this comes into it's something I want to bring up later, but I'll bring it up now. Is that the Kennedy family hired their own private doctors to?
Yeah, I know you want to bring that up. I'm going to stick with this for the time being.
Well, we'll talk about your point in just a minute, Tom.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely come to that, Tom. My point about this is that he's shot in the throat, and it's clear it's from behind. Connolly is shot from behind. That's 100%. Connolly was shot from behind. So if we're saying that the first bullet missed and the second bullet hit Connolly from behind directly, and we go with the second shooter theory, is that how was Kennedy shot behind without this magic bullet? But we know the magic bullet wasn't a thing, or I believe the magic bullet didn't exist. It's like I say, we're not in a world where Angelina Jolie is trying to kill the president by curving a bullet.
You never know. Lee Harvey Oswald could, before this happened, he could have gone to Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman could have taken off a weave thing and been like, "Your assassination, it's got to be JFK, my man." And he was like, "Oh, I don't want to do it." But Morgan Freeman's like, "The weavers told you to."
The weave, the power of the weave.
Coming back to sort of a reality standpoint here. Obviously, we know that the third bullet is the key to this one, and the third bullet is the bullet that went through Kennedy's head.
The fatal shot.
The fatal shot.
Now, I point out that of all the theories about the second shooter, the theory is that it's this third shot, the kill shot, that's the one from the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
There is no dispute about the other shots. There is no, in 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 cases, nobody says that either of the first two shots came from the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
No.
I think we can sort of come to the conclusion that Oswald was definitely involved. That he pulled the trigger, he had the gun and everything like that. Yeah. But it'd be interesting to find out whether he was acting alone, because I suppose from Oswald's point of view, like, he was killed by a chap called Jack Ruby, who was a Dallas nightclub owner, and before he could testify or give any evidence or give any kind of statements, anything like that, he was He was killed himself. I think that was on live TV as well at the time.
It
Which
was on live television. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and without sort of his statement to discuss if anybody what was his motive, or if there was anybody else influencing his decision to carry out this act of ultimately treason. It's a very sort of grey area. Like
It
it
is.
leaves it open for the second shooter. But I do agree with a lot of what you've said, Ben. Like talking about trajectory of bullets and things, and I totally agree with you on that. But at the same time, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, just before we move on and we start talking about Oswald and conspiracy, like being part of a larger conspiracy,
Yeah.
I'd just like to raise the point of blood spatter.
Right.
Okay, that's something I've not
Which-
even sort of began to look at. So this would be interesting, actually.
So there was a issue around the time that a forensic expert said that the blood spatter was consistent. The fragmentation of Kennedy's skull was consistent with being shot from in front. Okay,
Oh.
which leans towards this grassy knoll.
Yeah.
However, the issue with this is that this expert at the time completely ignored the blood spatter.
Right.
Simply went from the being shot in the head.
Okay.
One of the issues here is that the blood spatter from Kennedy's headshot,
Yeah.
again, from people like Connolly and the driver, is that Connolly's wife, in particular, remembers seeing her husband getting shot, and then the front of the car, like the inside, right where the driver is, being covered in blood.
Yeah.
As in, from not because of the shot on Connolly, but because of a further shot.
Right.
Now, the point is, we've all seen enough things and we all know enough about this that if a person is shot in the head from in front, the blood doesn't come out the front.
Comes out the back.
Comes out the back.
Or
Ergo, if a
possibly
person
from
is
the
shot-
ears or the nose or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately,
And the
leaves a big
opposite, if
hole
the
in the back of
person-
the head.
Yeah, if the person is shot in the back of the head, the blood comes out the front.
Yeah.
So if the front of the car is covered in blood, the spatter indicating that it's from the back, then that would imply that the shot came from behind rather than in front. And as the grassy knoll was in front, infer what you will.
Yeah. And
It brings something to my mind. So I'm sort of going along with Ben on this one. If there was a second shooter, surely there'd be two sort of blood spatters, surely, wouldn't there? Like if he's been shot twice by two different people from two different angles.
you mean there'd be two
then-
different angles of blood spatter?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like there'd be blood in front of, where the driver is, the window screen, the bonnet, whatever. But if there's a guy on the grassy knoll, just sort of in front of the car, then surely there'd be blood either on JFK's missus or the back of the car.
Yeah, and this brings me to before, like with Ben says, before we move on, there is a lot of people who think there is a person who has, if any, the evidence of where the bullet or the trajectory of the bullet hitting the president, and over the years she's been called just been given the name the Babushka lady.
Is that Cynthia Nix Jackson by any chance? The owner of a piece of footage that she gave to I forget the name of the organization, but it was a committee basically to investigate assassinations. So I read about that she had a bit of footage that sort of implicated that there was a bit of sort of gunshot smoke. And she sent it off to this committee. She never got it back, and she ended up suing the U.S. government for $10 million. I couldn't find out whether she actually won the case, but is that who you're on about, Tom, with this Babushka lady?
No, this is a lady who has never come forward at all, and I'll send you guys a photo of her. she is at the perfect angle, taking a photo at the time that the bullet would have hit, or around
Right.
that time.
Is that the
And
lady circles there?
that is the lady circled there, yeah. And she's never come forward, and the photos have never ever been seen.
Right.
Um,
That's interesting.
so if there's any evidence for the second shooter, it would be from a photograph of that lady. But
Yeah.
this brings me on to what I want to move on to, and that is that it was a conspiracy, as in the sense of people conspired against JFK himself. Obviously, there was a lot of people who this could come down to. You got the Russians, the Cubans, the mafia. You've got the FBI themselves, who could have been implicated into it, and there's a lot of people who say like Lee Harvey Oswald was just like a scapegoat.
Like a face of the operation, a face to the name sort of thing.
Yeah, and when he got caught and was going to court, they bumped him off. The people behind the actual assassination
Yeah.
bumped him off.
Yeah, no, definitely. As we discussed earlier, it was that Jack Ruby chap
Yeah,
who topped him off. What's interesting about that, he was supposed to go down for life, but then in the end, I think that got revoked. But then, as it was going back to court, I think he died. I didn't read how he died, but he died. So whether that was natural causes or whether he got sort of tipped off, just in case he had a bit of information that whoever it was, this higher power, didn't want to be heard in the courts. Yeah, there's that. So that's definitely quite interesting.
yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, the family actually hired private doctors to do the autopsy of the body.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, they chose the people to do it, and a lot of there's a few theories out there that like the mafia wanted to bump him off. And once JFK was killed and they brushed Lee Harvey Oswald out of the way, that they blackmailed the family to just go along with that he was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald, and that's why they got their own autopsy done and all that. I mean, it's in the show Red Dwarf. When they go back in time and
Yeah.
and they save him from being assassinated by knocking Lee Harvey Oswald out the window.
I love that episode.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that
But
episode.
like in that episode, like because they saved him, he gets arrested and he gets this oh, what's the word? Ben, you know words.
Exiled,
Not exiled.
dishonorated.
Yeah.
It was Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby was acquitted. Well, not acquitted. It was appealed, and he went for a second trial.
Yeah.
But before he could go
Right.
for the second trial, he died from complications from lung cancer.
But this is what I'm saying. Like the mafia could have blackmailed the family with all JFK's, dodgy antics.
Yeah.
Like he did have some dodgy dealings, and it came out.
Yeah. Let's
quite a
face
bit
it.
after.
He was a high-profile guy. He had a lot of enemies who all had a lot of motives to sort of.
But his dodgy dealings
Carry
came out.
on.
His dodgy dealings came out quite a bit after his death.
Right.
So, and he's quite an iconic figure, and he's got an airport named after him, and
a couple of museums and things. Yeah, definitely.
Right, but if he never got assassinated and his dodgy dealings came out when he was alive, it'd be a total opposite story. So, a lot of people think the mafia convinced the family to basically say, yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald did it. He was assassinated just by Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone, and making them get these autopsies done because the mafia knew about his dodgy dealings. And if the mafia had released his dodgy dealings like as soon as he died, like not long after, it would have been quite a different story behind him, I feel.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think one of these dodgy dealings, which I've heard about, is that's John's father. Pretty sure his name was Joseph. But John's father was involved with the mafia, with a guy called Sam Giancana, who was the head of the Chicago mob. Um, he was basically involved with them like during the sort of bootlegging days. So yeah, there is definitely some sort of connection with the mafias there, and some motive for the mafia to say, "See you in a bit, Duck."
Hmm. Hmm. So yeah, this is not Luke. This is going on like there wasn't a second shooter. This was all Lee Harvey Oswald on his own, shooting from the book repository. And yeah, so what do you think, Ben?
Yeah.
Right, okay, so where to start? I mean, which one do you want me to start with first? The doctors or the overarching everybody was involved?
I think
Let's go with the doctors.
Yeah.
So I've always found one of the most interesting things about the doctors is the amount of people who claim that there were multiple coffins and that different people that he was in fact sent to a different place to be examined where they forced this extra set of bullets. Like that, they covered up the bullet holes and put new ones in.
Hmm.
I've
And that
not
the
heard
auto
anything about that at all.
Yeah,
and
Especially this multiple coffins. Is this just sort of what have they said
so
about these multiple coffins?
so there was it's another one of these so-called I was there people.
Ah,
Um, he was an assistant to a medical examiner who claimed that JFK's body came to a different place than where it had
okay.
supposedly been sent to, and that he examined it, and it had been tampered with, and that they were tampering with it.
Yeah.
And that in fact, what came out the front where all the media wasn't JFK. JFK's body was shipped out the side.
Are
Now,
we talking about the Parkland Memorial Hospital where he was taken after the accident?
no, we're talking about when the plane was after he's come back on the plane.
Okay, yeah. I'm with you.
So this is once he's landed. They've taken him from Dallas. Plane's landed. Lyndon's been sworn in as the new president and so forth. And the body was taken to be examined. Now, bear in mind that the medical examiner, Parkland, was not allowed to do it. And everyone says this is part of the conspiracy, but actually, no, it's by law. And that a justice of the
Right.
peace would be the one that would sort it out. So there's no issue there. That was
Yeah.
all above board. That's with the law at the time. That isn't a conspiracy.
Yeah. Just for the listeners, it's worth pointing out that the chap we mentioned called Lyndon was actually John's successor, Lyndon B. Johnson. Sorry, carry on, Ben.
Yeah, he was the vice president at the time, and obviously, whenever
That's
a
the one.
president's killed, the vice president or the next in line, if both are killed in the same moment, it's the succession, the last person,
Okay.
next person in line is sworn in as the next president to make sure that the country doesn't go without a leader.
Yeah, that obviously that makes perfect sense. If, let's say, heaven forbid, anything happened to the Queen, the throne would go to her heir, and then so on and so forth. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It's just one of those. It's just a thing. So he was sworn in on the plane because that's what needed to be done. He needed to then be the president at that moment in time, at that time of crisis. Now,
Yeah,
the issue with this porter's or technician or whatever you want to call it, his point was that there was a second coffin that was snuck off the plane at the same time. Is that quite a lot of people have already debunked it. In that, where this supposed coffin was taken off was facing a buttload of people.
So it could have perhaps been a cover-up.
Would have easily been seen if it had happened.
Okay. Yeah.
Basically, what they're implying is there is no way that anybody could have snuck off a second coffin that had the moved remains of JFK.
Right. Okay, I understand. Yeah, I'm with you now.
Now, when we're talking about doctors and making it appear that everything came from Oswald, and their connection, and the Kennedys' connection to the mob. Yes, the Kennedys had a connection to the mob. JFK's dad, it's a well-known fact, had some dealings with the mob, and the mob provided some of the support and backing for JFK.
Yeah.
However,
For like
the
his
mob
campaign and things.
yeah, this is pre-President JFK. But
Yeah.
what we know is that once JFK became president and his brother was a senator, Robert Kennedy, is that Robert Kennedy did a lot to tackle organized crime. So the mob were not friends with the Kennedys at the time.
Right. Okay. That explains a lot of things. That obviously that could explain where the sort of twist in friendship, like quotation marks, friendship, where it could turn about face and why the mob could potentially have a motive to assassinate him.
But also, if the mob was so against the Kennedys and had all this dirt on Kennedy, it would have been completely irrelevant. It would have served no purpose to release it after the assassination straight away. It serves them nothing. They have nothing to gain. All it would do would people would go, oh, well, you're just kicking a dead man while he's down.
Yeah.
So the reason they would wait is quite simple. Nobody's going to listen to them if they do it there and then. Now, they could have done it before he died, but perhaps they believed they had some sort of leverage while he was alive and while he was president that they could then bank on. But
right,
he's dead. There's nothing you can bank on. So I don't see there being a reason or a point to them getting the Kennedy family to alter the body or to make any changes. Now, obviously, we're saying, why did they get private doctors involved? I don't know about you, but the Kennedys being the sort of family that they were, that makes perfect sense to me. That sort of
ultimately, at the end of the day, they are the president's family. They've got the money to say, you know what, we want to do this our way. I'm pretty sure we're all not shy to the fact that politically, it being in a power of politics, you can make things happen, you can cover things up, and I think them getting their own private detectives is probably their way of coming round to terms with what's going on and getting like the answer.
Well, also they would want a private doctor to handle their own personal doctors to handle it how they wanted.
Yes,
they want them to sort out JFK's body. They wanted them to do the examination report. That can easily just be from a family's need to know that it was being done in a way they trusted, rather than just a run-of-the-mill medical examiner.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit? You had cut out a little bit then.
Sorry, what I was saying is that would they have preferred to have a run-of-the-mill random medical examiner deal with the body? Yeah. Or would they want to go with somebody they trusted? If you had the option, and this is a general question to the both of you, if you were in that sort of power or you had that sort of lifestyle and you say, Pete, you're one of your many siblings dies, right?
Yeah.
Just follow.
Thanks for laughing, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Go on.
Keep with me here, boys.
Yeah, we're with you.
Bear in mind, we're assuming that your family are like the Kennedys at this point.
Yeah, we're all rich,
powerful socialites.
Yeah.
Now, one of them is
dodgy dealings with the mafia.
Probably have, to be fair. I just don't know about it.
Let's reel you in here. But
okay, we're in.
This has happened, right? And one of your family members is killed.
Yeah.
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 Would you? And you had a set of trusted doctors that have dealt with your family for years that you believe do the best job possible.
Yeah.
Now, would you rather have a run-of-the-mill random person that you've never met before come and deal with the body of somebody that you love, somebody that is a valuable member of your life, somebody that you've just lost, bear in mind? Would you rather have that person, like a random person, come and deal with it and
I'm
potentially
with
get
you
it
on
wrong,
that. I'd
or
rather
potentially
have
get it wrong?
somebody
Go
who
with somebody.
somebody who I know, somebody who I can trust, somebody who I know is a professional at what they do. So I agree with you. I'd probably, in the situation, I would have probably done the same thing and got private doctors in, private autopsiers, whatever the words are. Yeah, no, I'd have done the same. To be fair, in all honesty, if I was in that situation, to
Yeah,
be
if you had
saying,
the
there you go,
resources,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, if I
yeah,
had the money,
you would, wouldn't you? You would.
yeah, I think
You,
anyone would.
you'd want the best for your loved one.
Of course, yeah,
Uh,
definitely. You want the answers, and you want. It's ultimately for peace of mind, I'd guess. You want to make sure that despite this person you love, who has since deceased, they're in the right hands ultimately.
yeah, and I know I have been presenting the conspiracy side of things throughout this podcast, but when you think about it, like logically, there are more chances of the body being altered and edited from random point of view, which can be edited. Like anybody can get hold of these doctors and say do this or we'll do
Yeah,
so and so. Then if the Kennedys used family trusted doctors.
yeah. And to sort of further your point there, Tom, I guess if these mobs, mafias, whatever, knew who the Kennedy doctors were, they could any one of them could have said, "Here's an envelope with like $5,000 in. Tidy it up for me. Cover me up, scratch
Yeah,
me back, I scratch yours, sort of thing. There's always
exactly.
got to be that sort of influence. But
And also
I think with it being the president, I think the president's family would have been a bit more, on it. Let's get someone in we know. So I think both points are very good. I don't think either one of those points could sort of disprove each other. Not disprove, sort of cancel the other out.
I know what you mean.
So moving
You know,
on to the other part of your two-pronged assault here, Thomas, as I'm going to refer to it as.
I'll
The
two-prong you.
the overarching, this was everyone was involved.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, there are countless conspiracies stating different people. Lyndon B. Johnson himself has been accused of doing it because Kennedy wasn't going to go with him as being the vice president the next time around.
Yeah, there's
And
been
a lot of the people who were witnesses to him saying he would want to get rid of Kennedy have been debunked and deemed really quite untrustworthy.
I mean, the most untrustworthy one is, I believe, during his presidential campaign, Trump made a shot at his opponent because his opponent's father was with Kennedy or something like that on the day he got assassinated. So Trump accused this poor guy of being involved.
Trump.
George, the late George H.W. Bush, again, a
Yeah,
former president, who passed away, I think maybe last month, passed
I
away
think it was
recently.
last month. Yeah, very recent because Trump was at the wedding,
Late,
wasn't he?
late,
And everyone
late,
was being awkward with him.
late 2018, the former president, Bush Sr., passed away. He was accused of being involved. The FBI director at the time, J. Edgar Hoover, was accused of being involved. Like say, Lyndon B. Johnson, Fidel Castro was accused of being involved. The Russians. Hell, there's even a theory that the Israelis were involved.
I mean, it's not a good assassination unless the Israelis are involved, is it? Really? I mean,
Oops.
But let's.
Oh dear. Let's low back a little bit.
Yeah. Let's get this back on track.
No,
Tom's mild
this is the
Mossad
first.
comments.
This is the first episode about the Israelis being involved. But sorry, carry on. Carry on with what you saying, man, please.
There's
Yeah,
basically everyone has been accused of being involved. Everyone going. The one I want to focus on is ignoring all of these, is the conspiracy around Oswald, and perhaps there being other conspirators.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for that, you need to look at the sort of the background on Oswald. Oswald had tried to defect to Russia during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And
Tried
was
to renounce his citizenship, didn't he?
Yep. And basically, the Russians turned around and said, "Nah, you're all right."
We could do without you, Tar. Thank you though for
Yeah,
considering us, but see you in a bit.
Yeah, we're not really for you, mate.
Yeah.
Well, it's
he
always
was-
been up for debate about his involvement with Russia, but
Well, he was a communist, and he was also a Russian sympathizer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
he was a communist sympathizer. Oswald. Bear in mind, we're talking at a time where just the year previous, the Americans had tried to launch an assault on Cuba, the infamous Bay of Pigs escapade.
Invasion. Yep.
Yeah,
Which
which
worth
did
pointing
not go
out
very well.
failed.
Yeah, it flat out failed. It didn't go very well at all. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Many deeming that one of JFK's biggest failures.
Yeah.
And one of Lyndon B. Johnson's failures as well. Now, so we're looking at this point of Fidel Castro has just taken over Cuba. The quite happy and stable government has been taken over. A lot of Cubans have defected to America, and are setting up shop there. And you ended up with a lot of Cuban groups around the States who would get together, and they were anti-Castro, basically. Didn't like Castro, but they also didn't like the fact that the US had failed them.
Ben, just for the sake of the podcast, could you tell us a bit more about Fidel Castro? Because I've heard his name popping about. I've heard that JFK ultimately said, "No, you're not having any more sort of any more support from the military." But I've also heard that there was a few assassinations on him, like an exploding cigar at some point. Who is this Fidel character?
So Castro was like key in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he was a revolutionary communist leader.
Is he that guy you always see with like the sort of long dark hair, and he's got like a little cap on his head, and he's like a little white star? Is that the guy?
Yeah, that's who you.
You sometimes see him on T-shirts and things.
I think, Pete, you're thinking of Che Guevara.
No,
you are there. Yeah.
Oh right, okay, okay. I sort of know who you're on about. Yeah.
Fidel Castro took control of Cuba, and him and his brother Raul basically ran the country until their deaths.
Did they inherit the power of Cuba, or did they just take it?
No, they took it. They took the power.
Okay. I'm with you. I can see why. Okay. So carry on. Sorry.
They took Cuba. Castro was the leader. Castro was the big dog. I don't want to use the term dictator. Because it's quite an ugly word to throw around. But for the purpose of making it simple, that was his role in Cuba, which upset a lot of the. Yeah, so you can not every taking over and becoming a leader yourself, an unelected leader, doesn't necessarily go down well with everybody.
Of course, yeah. I mean, if somebody came into UK and said, "Right, yoink, I'm having that crown. See you in a bit, Queenie," I think all of us as a nation would be pretty damn pissed off.
Yeah, but I mean, he had backing and things like that. So people didn't stand against him. But we'll move past Cuba and the issues with Cuba.
Yeah. Sorry, go further on with the JFK thing.
Absolutely, we've given that. And it was known that Oswald was part of Cuban groups in the US.
Yeah.
And was very anti-JFK.
Yeah.
Now, when we sort of head down, there's lots of comments that Oswald was under investigation by the FBI during the time leading up to the assassination. And lots of people say that because the FBI supposedly had enough information to do something about it, knew that he could potentially do what he did, and they didn't act on it, that means they were in on it. And that the CIA were also in on it, and the CIA had put Oswald up to doing it.
Right. Well, it's interesting. From something I was reading earlier, was that the FBI were aware that Oswald was in the building, but they'd not told the CIA. However, the CIA had not told the FBI that this motorcade that JFK was in when he got shot was going through that specific point. So there's a little bit of miscommunication. So CIA didn't know Oswald was there, but the FBI weren't aware it was going to be happening at that point.
Yeah, and to be fair, both the Warren Commission and the House Committee on Assassinations both found that the Secret Service did not, in their opinion, do a very good job.
Yeah, because
it was the route was very, very public. Because I don't just mean like JFK driving through the middle of the streets. I mean that the route was public.
Yeah.
So anybody who wanted to do something could have got onto that route. It was a long route that was going to take 45 minutes to do, and the Secret Service weren't sweeping every single building at all times.
Yes, because there was over 20,000 windows in the area, and the CIA ultimately said, "Well, we don't have the manpower to cover every single window. Let's not bother."
Well, they were right, but nowadays it's a key thing is that the Secret Service must be able to manage the entirety of a route. But back then, not necessarily top of the list of priorities.
Yeah.
Now, they knew about him, so surely they would have stopped him, and by not stopping him, they're the ones involved. It poses the question, were they knowing that he was going to make an assassination attempt, or did they think he could potentially? Because there's a difference between believing somebody has the capacity and believing that they are 100% going to do something.
Yeah.
We know that.
Have you got anything?
UK.
Yeah.
Well, we know that from the UK. We know that there are terror watch in the UK. We have terror watch lists, and actually, sometimes the people who commit acts of terror are not even on the watch lists.
No.
Right. It could just be somebody who's just been radicalized, like that, and just said, "Today I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to do this."
Boom.
Yeah. But also, you have them on the watch list for maybe 5 years, and they've done nothing, and you don't believe that anything is imminent, and then they go and do something.
Ah, okay.
Now, what's key is obviously with Oswald's connections to A, Russia, and B, Cuba. In a logical sense, if you're working in FBI or CIA, and you think you can potentially use Oswald to find these people, you can use him as a source of information, which had been posturized quite a lot, that Oswald was an informant at times. Are you going to give up Oswald? Are you going to essentially what in that industry is called burn them? Which means that everyone knows that the FBI and CIA have been talking to the person and will cut all ties with them. Or are you going to let him be burned so that you get no information just on this potential that he could act, that he could shoot the president?
Yeah.
And you don't have
I think
going to do it.
Yeah. I think realistically, they wouldn't have thought, I don't think anyone could have predicted that it was going to happen, ultimately. Like, in terms of Oswald, like, how you're saying that they needed him, that and people are saying, but if you knew about it, why didn't you stop it? Ultimately, they couldn't have known that it was going to happen. Like, you make a decision. No one can read minds, can they?
No.
Now, whether CIA or any of that was involved, I almost think it's irrelevant. And I don't want to sound rude there, and I'm not dismissing anything here, Tom, is that we all know is that when Oswald says he was a patsy.
Yeah.
What's a patsy?
So he believes that he did it
Yeah.
He shot so the first time was that he wasn't involved at all. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't do anything. He was set up. Somebody else has killed the president, and that's that.
Which, when you think about it, it would be, I'm not saying he was, but like you've just discussed about all his Cuban and Russian sympathizing and wanting to defect, it would be easy to set up somebody with them beliefs. It'd be quite easily done.
Of course, yeah.
And yes, we do know that you can stage a scene. You could put the fingerprints on the bullets, that sort of stuff. But the amount of independent eyewitnesses that pointed at Oswald, because let's not forget, after Oswald has supposedly shot JFK, he kills a police officer.
Yes, that's right. Officer Tidbit, I think, or Tibbet. Something like that.
But an officer is killed while
searching, I think it was.
While searching for this killer.
Yeah.
Pulls over Oswald based on the description and is killed. Now, and there are various other eyewitnesses or random people in the street. Now, this is the key thing here. Random people in the street. Unless we're saying that the entirety of Dallas, Texas were CIA and FBI informants and working for both or working for the Cubans or working for the Russians, it just seems so statistically unlikely that a bunch of randomers were all in on it together and all decided it was Oswald, ranging from a nice elderly old woman to a shop owner.
You don't know she was nice.
That's a real conspiracy. For you listeners, sorry, just gonna interrupt you just for a second, Ben. For the listeners, the police officer that was killed was J.D. Tippett, police officer from Dallas, who Oswald was charged with murder for. Sorry, I just put that out there just so everyone's everyone's keeping up with us.
Yeah, everyone's keeping up. So I would say Oswald claiming he was a patsy is less him saying I didn't shoot the president, more him saying, "Oh, people have set me up for this. They've let me get this far. They got me to do it for them. I'm innocent." And I just think it's desperation. It's desperation from a man who realizes that while he's achieved his goal, he's not gotten away with it.
Yeah.
And he knows if he's not gotten away with it, the Russians aren't going to take him in. The Cubans aren't going to take him in. The mob or whoever aren't going to take him in. Because at that point, he is burnt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the guy who shot the president. Yeah, he was confirmed very, very uncooperative with all the police.
Yeah.
And kept changing his story continuously.
This is what I think as well. Like, even though it would be easy to use Oswald, whoever we're saying wanted JFK dead, I think, the way he went about it, it shows more guilt of him than, that he was a patsy, I think the way he behaved shows that it was his motive, his idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of... Go on, Pete.
Sorry, on the point that you've just made there, Ben, let's say, for example, I'm in an exam and I have a little thought, and I could be like, sorry, invigilator, it wasn't me, it was him. Anyone can say, sort of, it was nothing to do with me. I was pushed into it. I was forced to do it. I was provoked or sort of led down that path. I agree with what you've just said there, totally.
Yeah.
I think something that needs to be mentioned is that everyone says the CIA and that were involved because of this potential future that would have been had JFK lived.
Yeah.
Which is what was touched on in Red Dwarf. It was.
Yeah. is that the war in Vietnam would potentially not have happened.
Yeah.
The Cold War would potentially have diffused earlier,
Yeah.
and that actually the people who are saying the CIA were involved because they wanted those things to happen.
Yeah.
Which to me sounds like utter lunacy.
Well, you know,
Right.
But I don't want to.
It's the same sort of mindset of people who say, "Oh, war in Iraq, put the triangle up, Illuminati into it," you know.
Yeah, it's this idea that the CIA wanted thousands of people to die for a war to happen. That in a way achieved nothing. We all know that the Vietnam War.
They got raped. The Americans were shite.
Yeah, it was a conflict that led to nothing except for death. Countless of innocent people murdered. It's one of the big atrocities that's happened within our sort of. Yeah.
It didn't change either side's opinion of the other. It made them worse. But it didn't achieve. It was if anything, the Vietnam War was a failure on the American side.
Yeah. That's just really brought up in my mind Tropic Thunder, and I'm just picturing that scene where Ben Stiller's there's like, yeah, we're here, and he's holding his director's head, and they're like, who is this crazy man? Yeah, jokes aside, yeah, agree with you, Ben, totally.
But
There was nothing gained from it.
But also, what would they have achieved with the Cold War continuing?
Yeah.
Why would the CIA? Obviously, there was the spying and things like that, but hell, they'd be using spies. They would have been still using spies anyway.
Yeah.
Everyone still uses spies, even on their friends.
That's even to go and look at nice cathedrals.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna really take you straight away from that and direct you back on track.
Wait, so cathedrals?
I don't think that this point that the CIA had anything to gain by allowing this, by preventing what you call the alternate future where JFK, this assassination didn't happen. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have said, yes, we want war with Vietnam. Yes, we want the Cold War to continue. Yes, we want this. Yes, we want that. I don't see the point.
And I think to wrap this section off, I think the conspiracy theories behind this sort of blaming other people is exactly that. Like, a lot of people can't fathom that one man just did all this by himself. And I think a lot of people want to have more to it. You know, want to have this is why it happened, not that one man did it on his own. Because, like, even with the previous assassination of an American president with Lincoln, there was a group of conspirators. There wasn't just one. I mean, obviously Booth's the most famous, but there was more.
There were more, but I think it was McKinley. Both McKinley and Garfield, I believe, were.
And Lincoln.
Lincoln obviously was, but McKinley and Garfield are the other two. And both were killed by people acting alone, who were radicalized.
Just had this crazy idea.
So I don't think we have to assume that an assassination is performed by one person or that it's performed by a conspiracy of people.
Yeah.
I think it was hard for people to fathom with JFK what happened, and you want to blame people.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And at the time, it's so easy for the American public that were very anti-commie, as I'm sure they probably called them, to be like it was the goddamn Russians.
Of course, yeah. It's almost as if people want the conspiracy to sort of think about and to sort of preoccupy themselves, or just to sort of just throw the blame, basically.
Yeah.
How many events nowadays? And I'm talking in our time now. How many times do attacks happen and instantly everyone says
It's a terror attack.
it was a terrorist event caused by ISIS?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like, if you see something on the news, like if there's been people killed on the street or something, they'll
Well,
they'll
there was a
indicate.
thing that happened on New Year's in Manchester, wasn't there? I think.
Yeah, and underneath, like the sort of main caption, it says, "We do not believe this was a terrorist act." And I think on a lot of the cases recently, I've always seen that, whether they're stating whether it is or whether it isn't. I've seen that a lot on like
Well,
modern day cases.
Well, you get the public who instantly go, "Oh yeah, it's them bloody Muslim people in ISIS who are killing people."
Yeah,
It's this
Yeah.
assumption that any event is linked to the people at the time who were deemed your enemy.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if it happened in the, like, you know, 80s, I believe. Well, this is where I've got my bloody years wrong. 70s, 80s. If an attack happened like that in the UK, it'd be the bloody Irish. IRA.
Yeah, the IRA and all that. Yeah, definitely. The 1960s, by the way, Tom.
Yeah. I knew I'd get me years wrong.
No, but you're right. You've got a good point.
Yeah, stuff went on for some while. But you're looking at, say, a key example from recent memory, the Florida nightclub shooting.
Oh God, that was tragic. That was
It
awful.
was horrific. And everyone instantly went, "Was this an ISIS attack?"
Yeah.
And the instant thing was, even media outlets, this was an ISIS attack. And then actually, when people looked at it, it wasn't. It was completely unrelated.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with ISIS whatsoever.
Yeah. But
And I believe that potentially this is the point that we're looking at with JFK, is that it's looking for somebody to blame.
Yeah. And it's not just somebody. Like, in recent times, media blame games or films.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like when that
blame what
Flappy Bird came out.
Yeah, like in America, this little lad who I'd say for us was maybe year 1, year 2.
Yeah, quite young lad.
Yeah. He took his father's gun to school because his father had left it on the table, and you know, I believe Fox News blamed Minecraft. So
wow, I'd be blaming the father really, but
it gets blamed with whatever they have an agenda against, but also whatever they think is going to make a good story.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the key with the media. What like this sort of thing sells, and everything you read in the newspaper is not necessarily always going to be true. It could be someone just thinking, well, let's just change this teeny weeny thing here, and we might make £1 million off that.
And what's
ultimately that's the reality.
What's worse as well is the media can use an attack to make people go in uproar and against a certain thing.
Yeah, the propaganda. Yeah, definitely.
It happens a lot, and sometimes that's not purpose. But a lot of the time, that's just by accident. You've said something, and people get on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Have a tendency to be crazy.
Yeah.
That's just sure. But let's to wrap this up.
Yes.
I believe you want there's something you wish to discuss after this, Thomas. Is that when we look at the actual who killed Oswald, Jack Ruby?
Yeah.
It was well known that Ruby, yes, he may have had some connections to mob bosses, but that actually he didn't have any connections to Cuba or the Russians or the CIA or the FBI. The police didn't let him in. It was a man who took revenge.
Yeah.
And he believed it was his right.
His own hand.
He believed it was his right to avenge America.
Yeah,
which he has got that right. In all fairness,
yeah,
probably shouldn't have done what he did, but you can't sort of argue with him.
Yeah, and so like I say, wrapping that up and moving on to something else. Looking at people to blame, one of the weirdest things that's a conspiracy theory for people blaming is the Umbrella Man.
Oh God, yes.
Who?
The Umbrella Man. So even I think this is crazy, and I love me Tim for that. But like,
The Umbrella Man.
so he's a man who is depicted standing on the route and quite close to where JFK was shot, and he has an umbrella up. He's got a black umbrella up, even though it's clear what looks like to be a warm day. So there's lots of conspiracy theories that the Umbrella Man had some James Bond type umbrella that he could use.
Was it like his jetpack? Just woo!
That he could use to shoot JFK.
Yeah.
And people are saying that it was the Umbrella Man that shot JFK in the throat, in the neck. So yeah, that
Sounds
one's
like
a
the
bit.
Penguin from Batman.
Yes, but no, this guy he came forward years later, and he was like, I had the umbrella up in protest against JFK's father, something he had done, and that he did not agree with. So it was just a protest.
Right.
But yeah, the Umbrella Man is one of the weirder ones and less known ones that I've come across when I was looking into things to do with this podcast. But yeah, the Umbrella Man, not well known, but people blamed him. Poor guy.
I've seen you shared this earlier on with me, Tom. You shared somebody's drawn schematics of how this would work.
Yes, I did.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've seen that as well. Yes.
Just
Beautiful drawing skills, by the way.
it's
I mean,
just
it shows that there is a rocket launcher in somebody's umbrella. Which, if it's there, fair play to the designer, fair play to you. But yeah, a gun umbrella,
It's just like
really?
something, what's it, M would give to James Bond, innit?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
it's just like, as you say, this is even one that you've looked at and gone, this is silly.
Yeah, basically somebody's seen a guy with an umbrella up and gone, oh my god, there's no other explanation than he shot JFK. Yeah. But, you know, the guy came forward and he said why he did it, and yeah. So,
Like, the
there's
fact
that.
is, I would love to know how this umbrella performed the assassination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
that would have
I
just
think
been
the
incredible.
If we had the money of Mythbusters, we should make it.
and do it. Yeah, I think the the Umbrella Man's actual name was Louis Stephen Witt. And I read that he testified. He brought the umbrella into review, and as you say, he was saying it was a symbol of protest. But as crazy as the idea is, if he did take an umbrella in, he could have just taken his, his mum's or his dad's, and I'll look after the rocket launcher umbrella for me, go in and
Mum,
see
I'm
her.
just
Yeah,
leaving
I
the
don't want to let
rocket
them
launcher
know.
umbrella in the rack. I'm taking the other one.
But there is a little bit of credibility to it. There was a chap called Charles Sensney, and he worked in the Department of Defensive Weapons, and he was one of the developers. And he said that he actually created the umbrella gun, or a umbrella gun, whether it was this one, whether it was actually used or whatever. Said he did create an umbrella gun, but the reality, an umbrella gun, really? No.
But
I'm
moving
with you. I
on
think it
from the
sounds like a load of crap.
crazy side of things, this is my final one that I want to bring up. You know, the last one was really looking at people to blame and what have you. This one is that there's no one to blame. That JFK isn't, well, he didn't die, and that he used it to go underground and start an underground uh, government controlling the other one, so he could stay in
Ah.
office longer.
So like JFK is sort of Illuminati level.
Yeah, and there's a theory that this is backed up by that the family had stakes in a film company, so they could have created a fake dummy of JFK. There's also people who say that it was a body double that was used as like a sacrifice for JFK to go underground and
Like a
start his
doppelganger.
start his shadow government, and so he could stay in power and run the country without people knowing.
Yeah.
So people are saying that they used Oswald as the scapegoat again, and that there was no actual bullets fired from the gun, like they were blanks. So the people heard the noises, and then in the commotion, they could have used that commotion and the panic to
Yeah,
make
to
it
create
look
the
like
sort of
Kennedy was inflicted with the bullets. And then the
right.
photos of the autopsy after were either this double ganger or
Manipulated in
fake
some way.
dummy body. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, the family did own a film company, which I believe was called RKO Productions. I've got it down here on my little notes. I don't know.
Nice.
So, yeah,
It's
that's
it's food for thought. Definitely food for
so
thought.
that's one. But it's one of the things where people are saying, like in the last one, he had a lot of enemies, and this was a way to, drop out of the radar. They wouldn't be looking, they wouldn't be looking for him because he's dead. And
Yeah.
he could run the government from behind the scenes. Um, which I've left this one till last because I feel like to me it's the one that's least probable.
I'm sorry. This is least probable after the bazooka umbrella.
Yeah, at least in that one he's
To be
still
fair,
dead.
I do believe the rocket launcher umbrella. Okay, so
Yeah, well, I
I
mean,
think
we're definitely coming to something, Tom. If you're saying that this is your least,
Yeah,
um,
because I
I
think
I would
he
say
did
from my
die.
personal perspective, we go back to the point of the idea of the alternate future.
yeah,
Yeah,
If JFK was still alive and was secretly running the government in the background, would this alternative future still? It would have still happened, right? There
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
necessarily been the war with Vietnam. The Cold War may have ended up differently because what happened afterwards was not in line with what JFK was doing.
yeah,
And we all know that he couldn't control Johnson. That him and Johnson had different opinions.
yeah. This is again why I think it's a what's it yeah the least likable because if the gun fired blanks, why is there evidence of bullets? You know what I mean? You
yeah.
know,
And, with blanks, I'm pretty sure you still get the sort of shell cartridge or whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure you still get like the sort of the shell that comes out of the gun.
yeah, but you wouldn't get a bullet lodged in the thigh of
Yeah, fair
you
enough.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
I would say the issue with this body double theory is, are we really saying that Jackie Kennedy is the greatest actress of all time? And the reason I'm saying this is because the woman lost her husband and has spent the rest of her life under the impression that her husband was dead. She never once, suddenly gave away that perhaps he was still alive. No, she was always seen
in mourning.
under the impression that in mourning that he was dead. Now, either
Yeah,
she really is the best actress the world has ever seen, or let's be honest, there was no body double dummy.
Yeah, I mean it's
that's a
very
very good point.
unlikely because even in the commotion of people, that would have been caused, you know, do you have time to make it look like he's been shot? You know, And like even on the footage, that shaky footage from I've lost his name in my
Zapruder.
head. Yeah, you can see the Kennedy jolts, don't he?
Yeah, he sort of ducks his head down, doesn't he, a little bit, and then she sort of looks at him. Jacqueline, his wife.
Yeah, I think there's way too much. They would have had to have rehearsed that a lot.
Yes. Yeah,
A,
no,
A,
definitely.
A, A rehearsed it a lot, and B, they'd have had to be the world's best actors.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And I just think this one's a bit far fetched. And obviously, there's loads of other theories because it's such an iconic moment in history. But the ones I picked out are the ones I think are the most interesting. And for me personally, I don't know about you guys, I always come back to the second shooter, and I always have a theory that there was a second shooter, and I always think
Yeah.
that's probably what happened. Me personally, um,
What about you, Ben? What do you think? What do you think?
I would say as a
Your
whole,
personal opinion.
my opinion hasn't changed
Okay.
from this discussion. I still don't believe that there was a second shooter. I still think that there is overwhelming evidence to suggest otherwise.
Right.
But I would also say the trouble, as Tom's pointed out, there's a million conspiracies around this.
Yeah.
The JFK
Yeah.
assassination is one of the talking points of the 20th century when it comes
Yeah.
to politics. So I believe there will always be some opinion. There'll always be some
There'll always be
conspiracy
some sort of
theory around it.
new
Yeah,
information coming forward and things
somebody
like
will
that.
always
Yeah.
have an opinion. I would say, for me, it's a moment of madness where somebody decided that they wanted to do something. That Oswald decided, I want to change. I want to make what I believe is the right future to happen. I'm going to do something.
Yeah. It sounds a bit like when John Lennon was assassinated by that Chapman chap, and Chapman actually said, in his own words, he just wanted to go down in history associated with the Beatles. And from what you're saying, Ben, that sounds similar to what you're suggesting. This Lee Harvey Oswald was sort of thinking.
Yeah, and I agree with Ben. I do think Oswald, had all them thoughts in his head, but I don't know. I don't. I can't see one man having the bottle to go through with it on his own.
Yeah.
I always feel like he would have had to have had an accomplice, somebody to be like, I'm going to do this, you do that,
Yeah.
I mean,
Bearing in mind this is the President of America,
Yeah, I
one
think
person single-handedly,
I think it's such a big task for like one person to think they can complete themselves without talking to somebody about it, without saying, "Look, this is my plan," and discussing it with someone, saying, "I'm going to go to this floor, and that way I've got this angle," And I think the second shooter also, this is a man I feel who really wanted to complete his goal.
yeah.
And I feel like he would have wanted a second shooter there to make sure to cover all
The
aspects.
job was done.
Yeah.
in my opinion, I don't think Oswald was capable of having a second person. I think that he went to do what he did, believing that A, he could do it, but also as a man with nothing to lose.
Yeah, ultimately, you're right. Yeah, the guy had nothing to lose.
You have
Definitely.
nothing to lose by doing it. If he failed, he failed.
Yeah.
If he
No win, no loss. No win, no. What did he say? What's that? What's that like?
No win,
figure of
no
speech?
gain.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Ultimately, yeah.
I respect. I respect your opinion, Tom. My whole issue is where the hell did the second shooter go? Because the fact is nobody saw them. There's no casings in the area. There's just nothing to suggest that person was there. Like you say, obviously,
I feel like I always feel it was the second shot that was the second shooter, not the killing shot. And this is my opinion. I always feel the second shooter used the opportunity of the first shot being fired, which hit the front seat.
Connolly.
Thank you, Connolly. That was Oswald. Second shot was the second shooter who used the cover, let's call it, of the confusion, the fear of everybody in that vicinity that day to shoot Kennedy, and that's what got him in the neck. And then Oswald finished him off. That's how I see it.
I would be with you there, apart from the fact that the throat shot is first. It's in the Sepunda footage. It's one of the only things that's been corroborated is that the throat shot was before Connolly. Either if it's the magic bullet or anything else, the throat is the first.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think the first shot from Oswald missed, and then his second one is what got what's in the shoulder.
And his second shot got Connolly, and then a shot from the second shooter is the one that got him in the throat.
Yeah.
But I was going to say the second shot has to come for the throat has to come before Oswald's second shot.
Yeah. But like I say, I think the first one missed, and then they used that cover to.
I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest that shot between Oswald's supposedly miss.
Yeah.
And then his shot that hits Connolly, namely because the way they were traveling, the bullet would have ended up behind Kennedy, and it would either ended up on the back of the car, or, as we know about trajectory, would have hit the car behind, or one of the bikes, or would have landed on the road.
And
there was no evidence of that. And for me, that's why I'm not being swayed here.
Fair play. I mean, my objective was not to sway you as much as I'd like to.
No, absolutely. I think the objective of the podcast and all of us getting together was just to discuss these ideas.
It's to put them forward, and then you know.
That's it, and just sort of have a discussion. Absolutely. From a neutral point of view, I'll try not to sort of take sides. I'll listen to both sides.
We know you love the umbrella man.
I'm going to have a dream about it later. No, but I think what we can conclude from this is we definitely know that the assassination took place, and that in some way, form, Oswald was involved. I think we can all agree that was the cause. As you both said, there's not enough evidence there to sort of prove whether you're right, Tom, or prove whether Ben's right. Ultimately, that's the beauty of the mystery. That's the beauty of the conspiracy theory. So I think, is this the right time to sort of wrap things up, gentlemen?
I'd say so. I don't have any more.
Unless you've got any more points to say.
No. I've put all my theories forward.
Very good. Anything, Ben?
Not that I can think of, because the only other point about the shots was recreations that people have tried, but they've been widely disputed for years, so they're never ever.
That's why I didn't bring them up. To be fair.
No, that's fair enough.
So no, I would say we both, everyone's presented a side, which was the point of this, was to get both sides.
Yeah,
that's it. We've completed the goal of the podcast for this episode. So thank you for listening to Conspiracy Panda. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Tom, and you, Ben.
Yeah, man.
It's been amazing. We love your support for listening to these podcasts. So thank you to the audience for listening. We hope you have a great evening, a great morning, a great night, wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.